go ahead.
Thanks, Linda. I'd like to welcome everybody to Cattle Chats for April the 17th. Was kind of hoping there wouldn't be a whole bunch of snow out there still, but there still is. So I guess with that brings up a few of our topics that we've kind of selected for today. And I think one of the ones that's probably one of the critical ones is the feed the producers have and the shortages that some of them are facing right now. And because of that, we asked Melissa Atchison, who's our FPA livestock she works out of the Melita office, and we asked her to maybe come on and talk a little bit about what we can do to stretch our feed, and then maybe some things we should be watching out for, I guess, regarding some of the feeds that we may be getting in and quality issues. So then after that, being that we are in April, and that if the snow starts going fairly fast, I would imagine a lot of producers are going to want to move animals out as fast as they can. And we were able to get Dr. Roy Lewis to come back on again and talk about preparing the herd for pasture. Just some of the things we should be looking at doing with the cows and calves before they head out to pasture. So I guess with that, we have a fairly full agenda. So I'm going to let Melissa take over. So Linda, if you want to pass it over to Melissa, and let's get started.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Melissa, if you want to, there you go. We can see your desktop. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Great. Perfect, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Atchison. I work out of the Melita office as the FPA livestock. And today I'm just going to talk to you a bit about this stretching our feed resources, or lack thereof, I think. Let's get to the next slide here. So just due to the nature of this never-ending winter and you know, all the stuff going on with the wind and the snow and everything, we've had a lot of phone calls as staff regarding feeds shortage of supplies and limited ingredients. So when feed supplies are low, we kind of need to consider some other options of feeding our cow herd. The problem with these options, the popular one is that, you know, low quality, very low quality forage and or straw supplemented with some concentrates. The problem with them is that these refuges don't contain sufficient levels of nutrients, but when we use them in combination with grains and byproducts and protein supplements with some mineral and vitamins, we can generally meet the demands of livestock. Sometimes it may only be on a maintenance level, and that's where I have to add kind of a disclaimer to this presentation. These aren't rations that we would normally recommend for lactating and late pregnant cows, but they're going to get you by. These are just crazy circumstances, so we need to kind of get by with what you have. But you know, if this were a normal year, these aren't exactly rations that we would be totally recommending. What we need to do is make sure that we supply all the nutrients for our animals in order to maintain good health and body condition, and of course keep those reproductive rates up there. And also we need to remember that the nutritional needs of your herd change as they go through different stages of production. So it's super important, you know, if you're running on a bit of a feed shortage, call our staff. We've got lots of staff who can help you with least cost rations and just help you get by. And we're free. We're a free resource, and we're here to help you. So how much feed do I need? Here's just a quick, you know, lots of guys will look at their bale pile and go, gosh, I don't know. And so here's kind of a rough calculation to help you know how many bales you're going to need if you're feeding straight hay. So a cow eats about 2.5% of her body weight in dry matter on a day. Hay is, of course, about 85% dry matter. And I'm thinking June 1st, before the grass even thinks about coming on in the pastures. So on 150 cow herd, say your cows are 1,400 pounds, up until June 1st is about 40 days you'd be supplemental feeding. Here's the quick calculation. 1,400 pounds, 2 times their 2.5% gives you 35 pounds of dry matter. You have to convert that to an as-fed basis. So I said that hay is about 85% dry matter. So you divide by 85%, and that gives you 41 pounds of hay per cow per day. 41 times your 40 days times your 150 cows And if your bales weigh 1,300 pounds, that's about 189 bales, and that doesn't include waste. And we generally like to say about 15% waste at least in round bale feeders, and on lower quality forages, even you can up that to 20 to 25%. Same goes for actually what they'll eat in their body weight. Poor quality forages, they'll eat actually a lower amount. The other thing I want to say is I know it's tempting to let your cows out on those pastures as soon as you see bare ground. I know it's tempting, but please, let's try not to do that. You're going to hurt your pastures and you're going to start being short in late summer, and that's going to continue your cycle of this feed shortage. If you have to get them out of the yard, do a sacrifice paddock. The cows can hammer that paddock. You can supplemental feed out there while they pick, but try not to, sacrifice all your pastures in that way. Okay, so for feeding straw, it's very poor quality. Cows can only eat about 1.25% of their body weight in dry matter of straw just because of its bulky nature. As far as palatability goes, oat straw is kind of the highest. Barley, a little bit better, or a little bit worse, down to wheat and down to rye. Rye straw is the lowest of the low. And for some reason, those cows really like aged straw. If it's been sitting there for a year or two, it tends to increase the palatability and make it a little bit more digestible. Straw does not contain enough nutrients for pregnant or lactating cows, but with a combination of grains and byproducts and some supplements, we can meet the maintenance demands. But we don't recommend it, but if it's all you got, it's all you got, and it's desperate times call for desperate measures. Here's just a note on straw quality, and you'll see here a pregnant cow or a lactating cow needs about 14% crude protein in her diet, and here we see straw does not meet that. So you cannot feed that cow straw alone. She will lose weight. Well, she'll probably impact. She physically cannot eat enough straw to meet her demands. The bulk of it is just too much. When feeding straw, energy and protein supplementation are hugely important. You need some rumen-degradable protein in there, some bypass protein. So what we like to use, you can use barley, oats, distillers dry grains, pellets, cubes. You can supplement with good quality alfalfa hay. You can use canola meal or soybean meal or other protein supplements. Straw and grain are high in potassium. There's kind of a note here. They can cause, which ties up magnesium, and it causes winter tetany. You'll notice your cows they'll lie down and be bright-eyed, but they just can't seem to move their legs. Limestone or Magox can prevent that. If you're feeding more than 8 or 9 pounds of concentrate per day, we recommend that you feed that in equal portions twice per day, but in reality, I mean, nobody's going to do that. So I just got to say it's advisable, but in reality, it's not really going to happen. So when you're feeding these types of things, again, super important to get a ration formulated to prevent wrecks due to mineral deficiencies. Here's a couple examples of different rations. We're using straw as the main ingredient. So ration A here, and you'll see here, I don't like to give any of these cows, I won't push them on more than 20 pounds of straw. So here we got them all at 17. That's where I kind of cap out. This ration's got 10 pounds of barley or oats. Give them a little bit of protein supplement, a little bit of canola meal, some 1-to-1 mineral, and some salt. Please don't get rid of your salt or mineral when you're trying to save some money. Mineral supplementation is a huge part of reproductive performance, and that really affects your bottom line. You'll really save money by feeding mineral. Here's another ration. Instead of having the protein supplement, we up the canola meal for that protein. This ration here leaves out the grain but puts in some screenings, puts in some supplement. Here's another one with screenings and adding canola meal instead of supplement. So there's lots of wiggle room. If you find that you've got some feeds on hand, we can find a way to feed them most of the time. Some other options for feed rations based on a 1,400-pound cow. If she has a body condition score of about 3 out of 5, these would meet her requirements pre and post lactation. So some other examples. I can send these slides out. They'll be on the recorded webinar. You can take a look at them. These ones include some ammoniated straw, barley straw, things that you can try to to supplement your poor quality forages with. Oops, sorry. Salt and minerals. The general rule of thumb when feeding a diet high in cereal, silage, straw, grass, hay, or green feed or grain, we'd like you to supplement with a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 mineral. Magox and or limestone may also be required on a ration like that, but it's also based on ration development. It's super important to get your rations balanced. If you're feeding a diet high in alfalfa, supplement with a 1-to-1 mineral and some trace mineralized fortified salt. In that fortified salt, it has similar levels of iodine and cobalt as blue salt, but it also contains good trace minerals like copper, zinc, manganese. Sometimes it has selenium. Those are really important. Those are your breeding minerals. Just think of it as super, super important for maintenance of high reproductive level. And also, most cows require about 2 to 3 ounces of mineral per head per day. That depends on the formulation, but that's a ballpark. So if you've got 100 pregnant cows, they should be eating about 1 25 kilogram bag every 3 to 4 days. So that's a good way to measure how fast your minerals disappearing to see if you're getting enough into them. Another method people might use to kind of get these poor quality forages and even chaff and things like that off the ground is ammoniation. We've done a little cost benefit analysis here. You need 3% concentration of ammonia per 1,000 pounds. So that gives you 30 pounds of ammonia. 30 pounds at 55 cents a pound gives you about $16.50 per bale. You also have to cover the stack with plastic. So that's giving you another cost of $21 per bale. There's a huge caution for nitrate toxicity in hot spots. So when you ammoniate it, you put the plastic on, you leave it on for about 3 weeks, and you need to take the plastic off and be very careful because of the ammonia. Be careful when you take the plastic off, do it in a well-ventilated area, preferably on a windy day that's blowing away from your sheds and everything. And be super careful because that is toxic. You can have hot spots in the pile. And I mean, so you're ammoniating these piles for $25 to $25 a bale, and you're only increasing your protein to 6 or 7%. Is it worth it? I don't know. It'll increase the palatability, definitely. It has its place. If that's all you got, that might be what you need to do. Of course, supplementing with some other things to get them by on a ration, but that's just an estimate of the cost. Here's some examples of energy supplements and their TDN, so their energy amounts. And here we have different protein supplements that you may be able to get a hold of. As far as distillers grains goes, right now, as far as I know, they're pretty difficult to get a hold of, so it's kind of a moot point, but I have them in here as an option. Here's a hot button topic. We've had a lot of guys call. I know a lot of people who are putting molasses on their hay and treating their hay or poor quality hay and some straw. Here's a cost benefit analysis here. It's 5 gallons you got to put on a bale at about $1.75 a gallon. So it's costing you about $8.75 per bale. You'll only be increasing your protein by about 1.6%. So if that poor quality forage is at 5% protein, after you treat it, it'll be 6.6. Your energy is only going to increase about 2.3%. So if you're 49, it's only going to 51.3. This is another, you can't turn a sow's ear until a silk purse scenario. It's just not going to happen. So in reality, it's extremely difficult as well to have the molasses evenly distributed through the bale. The highest concentrations are going to be at the end where the bale was injected. The middle kind of gets variable, and the opposite end really basically has nothing in it. And those cows know where the good hot spots are. So the bossy cows are going to get that yummy end and eat it all, and you know, those shy heifers or older cows are going to get what's left, and it's just going to, you know, you got to watch how you feed it. You can top dress it if you want to do it that way, then everybody gets a fair bite. Just letting you know that it's not, you know, you can't just pour it on cardboard, you know. So this is kind of just a disclaimer saying you're not really getting that much out of it, but it will increase that palatability. If they're refusing to eat it, you can pour some molasses on it. It'll give them some gut fill. Screening pellets are the byproducts of thresh grains. The main concern when we're feeding screenings is the variability of the composition. Screenings represent a source of feed energy, so their composition determines their usefulness as a feed. The best grades of screenings consist of broken, shrunken kernels of small grain and have a feeding value of slightly less than oats. So, you know, you can, if you're getting good quality screenings, you can compare them to oats. The light, chaffy ones with, you know, weed seeds, they're a lot lower in feeding value and are really variable in their composition. So you kind of have to be careful. I really suggest that you send them away for analysis. The mills can guarantee the crude protein content, but they can't guarantee the energy. So, I mean, it's really important to send that away for an analysis and do a cost-benefit analysis. Just because something's cheaper on a per-ton basis doesn't mean it's going to be cheaper in the ration. Because, well, I'll mention that later, actually. Feeding screenings, they're really good for extending feed supplies for animals that are not at super high levels of production. They can be put to good use as the only concentrate fed to dry cows and replacement heifers. But that is provided the forage is of, you know, reasonable quality, you know, cow quality. So you can feed up to 6 pounds a head for, you know, your 5 to 7 weight heifers and about 10 pounds a day for dry cows. Here's what I was talking about earlier of something being, you know, cheaper maybe on a per ton basis, but not cheaper on the as fed basis. Here's the amount of pellets to replace 10 pounds of barley. So it depends on the energy content of the pellet, so it's important to get them tested. The TDN in a barley is about 83%. The TDN in a pellets is variable. But if the pellets contain, say, 70% TDN comparable to oats, or a little bit worse than oats, 10 pounds, if you're feeding 10 pounds of barley, you're getting 8.3 pounds of TDN from that barley. So if you switch that into pellets at 70%, you would need to feed 12 pounds. So you're feeding an extra 2 pounds every time. So that's just what I was talking about. Just, you know, just because something's cheaper per ton than barley doesn't mean it's going to be cheaper in the ration, because you might actually have to end up using more of it. So it's important to do that cost-benefit analysis. I have had a lot of phone calls about moldy feed. I've sent quite a few samples lately to the lab of just pretty stinky moldy forage. The presence of mold doesn't necessarily mean that the feed can't be used. Most molds aren't toxic when they're fed to livestock, but some molds can be very toxic and dangerous, and producers should be aware of the possible dangers and take the following steps to minimize risk. A lot of molds they produce toxins which can be mycotoxic. Some of them can't be identified, but symptoms vary with a particular mold. It helps to remember that cows are pretty resistant to mold and toxins, but younger animals are more susceptible than healthy, mature animals. So moldy feed is really not recommended for young stock. Definitely not recommended for pregnant cows. Like you can do it, but get it tested. We run a test called a 3M, and that is a mold count plus ID. Loss in feed value with moldy feed can be significant. You can knock down your energy by 10% when molds are present, and you have to adjust your rations accordingly. The big thing with molds and pregnant cattle is mycotic abortions with the two molds, especially mucor and aspergillus. So we need to be careful about that. Again, if we send it for a test, we can tell if those are present and at what level. When inhaled, mold spores can cause the lungs to become abnormally sensitive, and chronic respiratory disease and death can occur with exposure to moldy feedstuffs. Bale processing also is not a guarantee that you're lowering the mold in that feed. It can knock some of it off, but you know, don't think that just putting a moldy bale through the processor is going to get rid of all the mold. Here's just some safeguards. Moldy feed can mean trouble, but the risk can be minimized by smart management. If moldy hay or grain or concentrate is to be fed, observe the following precautions. Send a representative sample of the feed to the feed testing lab for mold analysis. Bring it into your GO office. We'd be happy to pack that up for you. Grain samples, don't grind them, don't process them. They want the whole grain. The procedure takes about 2 to 4 weeks because they have to culture a sample of that mold. I also recommend with that mold analysis just to do a nutrient analysis because, like I said earlier, moldy feeds can knock back your nutrient content through your feed. Avoid feeding moldy feeds to young animals. They're pretty susceptible, and also pregnant ones. Gradually, you can, if you're going to feed them, I mean, it's just the year it is. If that's all you've got, you're going to have to do it. So if you gradually introduce it into the ration and kind of blend it a bit, moldy hay tends to be unpalatable. We all know that it smells bad. Many problems attributed to mold are actually caused by malnutrition due to feed refusal. So it takes cattle a few days to adjust to that bad taste and the dust and the stinky smell. Some cattle will outright refuse and they would rather starve. Another thing you can try is putting it in for 2 days, taking it out for 2 days, do a bit of a rotation. But again, that's based on the results of your mold test. Balance moldy feeds with good quality ingredients. Feed moldy hay outside, not in sheds, or don't use it in your calving pens in the barn. The effects of those dust and spores on the respiratory system can be pretty bad, and that includes humans. Beware of the health hazards involved with working with moldy feeds and take precaution. If problems are encountered, stop using that feed and seek help from a competent source. Again, MAFRI can send them for analysis and help you balance your rations and get by. Liquid supplements. Okay, there's a lot of promises with liquid supplements. All that liquid supplements are is a liquid medium and one or more additives. Generally, they're molasses with urea, and sometimes they add a mineral package to them as well. They can help improve the digestibility of low-quality forages. However, sufficient energy already has to be present in those forages. You can't just dump it on newspaper and expect your cows to do okay. It's not a complete ration. They contain the same total energy as average screening pellets, and the cost is variable between suppliers. They have their place. They should be just carefully evaluated to assure proper and efficient use. Liquid supplements are a protein supplement. They're not complete ration. They have about a 70% dry matter content, and they add propylene glycol just to keep the freezing point down. They have about the same total energy as screenings. Most liquid supplements contain about 30 to 35% crude protein, which comes from urea. So, well, or 25 to 28% of which comes from urea. So in other words, about 80% of the crude protein in those supplements is from urea. So we need to be careful about that, because if you get that cow that licks too much, that can cause toxicity. When the energy content in your forage, though, again, is not sufficient, cattle will require an extra energy supplement as well as a protein supplement on top of the liquid supplement. So it's not magic. It has its place, but it needs to be properly formulated. The advantages of liquid supplements when sprayed on poor quality roughages, they like the taste of it. It helps increase their intake. There's also some evidence that digestion may be improved. They're easy to use and convenient when used free choice, when they're limited for their consumption by using one of the wheels. As disadvantages go, they're not a major source of energy, and only a limited amount can be fed, usually about, if you get the feed tag, usually about a half to a kilogram per day. The cattle will eat varying amounts, so it's really hard to control their intake. They have the lick wheel, but some cows will figure that out to spin it back and forth and just stand there all day. Unless sufficient energy is available in the ration, again, supplemental protein may not be used very effectively. So, it's got to already have enough energy in it. Otherwise, adding protein is not going to do anything. If sufficient energy is not otherwise available, cattle may overeat the supplement, and that can cause toxicity problems. And also, non-protein nitrogen, like the urea, is not utilized as efficiently in cattle under 600 pounds. So it's not recommended for young stock. Here's a note about water. I've had a few guys saying that their cows are still licking snow. Licking snow is only for healthy, mature cows, and they have to be in perfect condition. They better have a body condition score of 3 or higher. The snow has to be fluffy and loose and sugary. Cows just don't know how to eat snow. They're not born that way. That's a learned behavior. So if you're buying cows in and dumping them in with the cows that are already out there licking snow, bad idea. They have to be trained to do it. Right now is a terrible time to force animals to lick snow. It's crusty, it's crystally, it's hard on their noses. It's discouraging their feeding on that snow, and it's going to contribute to the chronic dehydration that they already tend to have in winter, and that'll limit your feed intakes and just send them on a downhill spiral. The reality about a feed shortage is that is cash flow. You may need to sell off some of your stock to generate some cash flow in order to buy some feed, okay? Drastic times call for drastic measures. If cash flow is a problem, you've got to take a long look around the farm and market any livestock you can to generate cash flow. Borrowing money to purchase really expensive feed may have an effect on your long-term profitability. So if you've already got marketable livestock on the farm, it's probably a better idea to get rid of them to buy feed rather than to go to the bank. The first thing to consider are any young stock. They're pretty liquid. Feeders, stockers, these animals are getting a good price, and buyers are still securing their numbers for grass. Cull your unproductive cows. Be ruthless. Anything that has hoof or udder or temperament problems or just general poor performance, you know, they come into the chute every fall and they are fat as a tick and their calf looks like a sheep, put her on the bus. Like, she can go. Semen test your herd bulls early if you can. If you have extra, you know, power in your bull battery, get that vet out to perform breeding soundness evaluations on all of them to make sure they're good and ready. If anything fails, they can go to market to buy feed for the rest of the herd. I mean, cull cows and bulls are fetching a decent price if they're in okay shape. And, you know, if none of these options are available to you, you might have to start selling some bred cows. Even if they're a bit under condition, you may think it's embarrassing to take cattle to town when they look a little bit tough. You know, it's that what would my neighbors think mentality, but it looks a lot worse when we get the call from the animal health line that we need to go take photos and start stuff with the arms and stuff and to take your cattle away. That's not a good scene. So it's better to sell them off for dollars right now to keep the animals you have left fed, and then you can restock when times are better, right? As a cautionary note, though, if your cows are too thin, and you know which ones that won't withstand transports, they're considered unfit for transport and are not to go to market. I mean, do the right thing. If she's really that thin and going down, do the right thing and maybe take the 22 to her and make sure you dispose of her properly. If you've got a situation that's going south in a hurry that you know of, the animal health care line number is 1-800-945-8001. All reports are kept totally confidential. The maximum fine for animal abuse is $10,000 per count and can include up to 6 months in jail and a lifetime prohibition on owning any animals, and that includes pets. You know, be a good neighbor. Nobody willingly starves livestock. I mean, a lot of times denial or embarrassment turn a bad situation worse, and a lot of times that's always, or a lot of times it can be mental illness that's even results in a welfare situation. So, I mean, nobody does it intentionally. Just sometimes bad things happen to good people, and we kind of just have to be aware of that. We are a consumer-driven industry. We need to do the right thing, right? If you think you have extra feed on hand, like, be a good neighbor. Advertise it as soon as you can. If you've done that calculation, you know you've got extra bales, put them up for sale, put them on Swap and Shop, eBrandon, something like that. There's guys that are pretty desperate here for some feed. Just to wrap it up, know what you've got on hand and what's available around you. Feed test, feed test, feed test. I mean, you just take what you can get, test it. Buyer beware. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If a company stands behind their product, they should have no qualms about giving you a feed tag, even if you haven't bought the product, so that you can go and get that ration balanced. So don't feel like you can't request a feed tag. You should be able to ask for that anytime. Seek professional advice and ask for help. Staff at MAFRI, we're free, we're neutral, we're not trying to sell you anything. We just want to do what's right by you and your farm. And lastly, like I said, know your limits. You might have to start some incremental destocking to kind of release some cash flow to buy some feed. That's kind of all that I have, but we've got lots of time for questions. We've also got Andrea Arbuckle here and Todd Wallace to front some questions. If you have any questions, if you've got problems with your feed, you've got some unique ingredients that you'd like some advice on, we're here right now to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay,
So
Melissa,
thank you.
I do have a couple here.
Okay.
A producer is looking for a recommendation. He says, I have poor hay and will be short. Should I add straw and grain or just grain?
If my recommendation, if that hay is already poor quality, I would add just grain. What does he? Is he calving right now? I assume he's close to calving, or if he has calved.
It doesn't really say.
What kind of shape are his cows? Yeah, and it also depends on the shape that his cows are in. If those cows are in good shape, I mean, you might be able to sneak some straw in there, but it also depends on their point in production. If they're late gestation and lactation, I would definitely not put straw on that ration. And if they're in tough shape, I would not do that either.
Okay, and then someone is asking, is there some place to call or a list of hay that might be available?
Yeah, we have the Manitoba hay listing. It's online, or you can phone the Go office and we can hook you up with that. I don't know how well utilized it has been this winter. Okay, Andrea is saying there hasn't been much feed put on there this year. Swap and Shop, Brandon, the cooperator, Western producer, Todd saying you've really got to search. The trouble is, I think some guys do have extra feed, but they're with this weather just going on like this, they're just scared to liquidate it at this time. So
word of mouth. Don't be afraid to
yeah,
ask your neighbors.
Don't be afraid to ask your neighbors for sure.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Lionel, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that's good. Thanks, Melissa. That was good. It went through a lot of stuff that I think producers are facing, and hopefully that we get some warm weather here and we get some green grass growing. So thanks, Melissa.
Great, thanks for
I guess
having me.
with that, Linda, maybe we should see if we can get Roy on then.
Yeah, can you hear me, Linda?
Yeah, we did that.
Rusty.
It's always that feeling after it's over.
It's like, do you find every time you present, like you're so comfortable to talk, it's like an out of body?
Can you hear me, Linda?
Yes, Roy, we can hear you. Go ahead. You need to click the button that says show my
Okay,
screen.
Okay, yeah, just what you told me there. It blacked out for a minute there, so I wasn't sure what was going on. Okay,
There you
show
go.
my screen, I just hit it.
Yep, we can see your screen now. Probably best if you close Outlook.
So close.
Well, wherever you get your
close-
Outmail, your email, I'm sure that's Outlook, isn't it? I see it's open on your taskbar
yeah.
on the bottom. So if you just close
So
that.
I can close everything. I can
And just-
close everything else off. So
Sure, just open up your presentation. You can minimize the menu. There's a tab that sticks out to the left-hand side with a white arrow, and it's surrounded by orange. If you click on that, it'll hide right at
Yeah.
the side.
Okay, so that's done. And now just click out of the other.
Yep.
You can still
And then-
okay, and I'll still keep clicking out.
Yep, and then just open your presentation.
Are you sure you want to leave the webinar? No.
No, just don't click that one.
Yeah. I didn't? Okay, so here we go. We're getting there. Okay, here we go. Can you see mine now?
I can see that, yes, I can see your desktop, but I don't see your presentation yet. Oh, there, it's opening right now.
Yeah, getting ready for turnout.
There we go.
20.
Okay, it's open. I can see it now. So if you just want to start your presentation, you go ahead.
Okay, and I've got about half an hour, Linda?
That's fine.
Okay, perfect. I will start. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, or good noon, I guess. Speaking to you from Alberta here. So this presentation will take about half an hour, and it's just on things to get ready for spring turnout this spring coming around the corner, hopefully if the snow ever melts. I kind of always look at it backwards to the, what can increase profits for you going onto the pasture. And obviously herd health protocols, working with your veterinarian. We're going to talk about vaccination protocols, going to get into a little bit parasite stuff through midsummer, and of course implanting the commercial cattle going on, and finish up with a little bit on the just breeding soundness exam just quickly at the end of the thing for your bulls going out, so that basically the whole herd is healthy, protected, and ready to breed, reproduce, and grow over the summer. I think there's a few things that you want to do as far as asking questions to yourself as a producer, and that is what things will both the calves and the cows be exposed to at the pasture in the form of diseases and other things that we want to try to prevent before they go out there, because it's hard to get a hold of them once they get to pasture. So we want them going out healthy and protected. And then what is the past history of things on the pasture, whether it be lungworms, getting into hazardous things, this sort of thing. It's all things you want to consider when you're turning cattle out, especially to a brand new pasture that you may have just either purchased or had access to. And the other thing is really those calves at pasture where they're making you the cheap money, in the sense that gains are very inexpensive at pasture. So how can we maximize that to get you the good returns on those calves come fall when you wean them and that sort of thing. And we also want to have the cows set up to reproductively perform and breed and conceive to set you up for a good success next year at calving season. So those are all the things, are the questions you want to ask yourself. I always say too, before turning out to pasture, it's always good to check fences and think of things like old batteries left around from electric fencing, that sort of thing. Every year we run into issues with lead poisoning on pasture, mainly when people turn cattle into new pastures where they can have access to old batteries that fall apart, or junk pits, or this sort of thing. Always keep that in mind, because that can create some, excuse me, some big losses over the summer once the cattle are turned out there. And from a nutritional standpoint, we just heard a really good nutritional presentation. I think the big thing that just because they go out to grass, don't forget about them, and ensure that they've got at least free choice minerals if you can, trace mineralized salt, or preferably free choice minerals with salt in it all summer to again maximize reproductive potential for sure, and having all those trace minerals so that they grow and do well, and you don't run into any deficiencies over the summer. This picture of this calf, and I just threw this in, is one I treated that had infected joints, but what I wanted to show you, that you can see that lariat coiled up, and this was the person's, this is the sort of things you have to go to. This calf was at pasture with its mother, and the only way they could catch it is they kept a halter on it with about an 87-foot rope that you could grab the calf and treat it. And those are the sort of issues you run into at pasture if you run into problems where you've got to treat them. Way better if they're sent out healthy and you don't have those issues, because pastures, if you're lucky if you can find them, and then B, can you catch them and treat them, or should they even be brought home? So just think of that when the cattle are going out. I've got a checklist for kind of a summary at turnout, things you want to think about. Calves, obviously the things you have to vaccinate for that they may get over the summer, and I'll show you that in a minute here. Implanting, again, the ways to increase growth, especially on, again, it's got to be castrated bull calves, so don't implant intact bulls even if you intend to castrate them later. Make sure they're steers first, or at the time of castration you implant them. And any non-replacement heifers might be something to consider. I threw in metaphylactic antibiotics, and where I'm getting at here is I think more producers are turning to this if they had summer pneumonia problems, and especially stressful when the young calves go out to pasture. You've got the transportation to get them there. They're pretty stressed. Some consider that. I'm not saying this should be a standard thing across the board, something you might want to talk about to your veterinarian if long-term one-shot antibiotics such as these macrolides that are out, Draxxin, Zaprivo, these sorts of things may be able to be used. Fly control, we always want to consider that, and I think as long as one of the pair of either the cow or the calf, and I kind of prefer treating the calves are in close proximity, so whether you're using a product like Silence, it's a pour-on, fly tag, that sort of thing, I think that'll go a long ways to again, preventing the issues with of flies bothering the cattle and gains going down. And we're talking now, and this is kind of maybe a little bit more through Merck because we've got this product Safeguard that's a dewormer, but it's one to think about not at turnout because the calves would be just about no parasites at that level, but more midsummer, and it's something you can go through the mineral if it's scripted in from your veterinarian. All these things hopefully will minimize disease and maximize gains and stuff on pasture. Cows, what we want to think about is obviously the pre-breeding shots. So if and keep in mind, I'm talking about this sort of traditional calving thing where the cows are calving now or have calved, and you're going to breed them in May. Obviously, if you've got a fall calving program where there's still bred going out to pasture, this will be a little different scenario. So I'm kind of talking about typically the classic turnout to pasture and breed over the summer. So yeah, you want to have the pre-breeding shots, the IBR, BVD vaccine into them to again maximize the protection against the reproductive diseases. And I think it's a really good time when you're thinking of turning out to really check. We just had the presentation talking about a feed is short in Manitoba. You know, culling cows, again, why I look at it from if feed was plentiful and they're already going out to pasture, you still want to check feet, you know, udders, eyes, that sort of things, not turning out something that's going to be a problem, a foot problem that's going to exacerbate and get bad, and that cow's going to really go downhill. You know, udders that have mastitis, maybe early cancer eyes, that sort of thing that you may cull through the summer. Keep them at home and don't turn them out. Keep them at home with their calf, and then that'll minimize a bunch of problems you might have. Again, fly control talked about on the calves, the same idea for the cows. The deworming, if you go into, will minimize the parasites in the cows. They'll milk better, and as a result, calves will gain better, and they will come off grass. You'll utilize the grass that much better as well. Bulls, and I'll just elaborate that right at the very end. Semen evaluation, again, we want to, that was mentioned in the last presentation, get rid of those bulls that are no good. And again, the bulls really check their feet. Might be a consideration of foot rot vaccination, but that's again up to you and your veterinarian as far as if you decide that's a worthwhile thing to do. Just wanted to just quickly go over, this is one of the things I talk about a lot, but just in vaccinating the cattle, you pay good money for your vaccines in general. Make sure that you handle them properly. If you're giving a couple shots to the calves, make sure that they're a hand breadth apart so that you're not mixing the vaccines under the skin, so to speak. And just do all those proper things, I guess, to maximize the potential of the vaccines and not have a vaccine failure, because you're trying to protect against these diseases, so we have to get the vaccine into them properly in order to have that happen. If you're using a modified live vaccine before breeding on the cows, you know, just make sure don't mix up more than the amount of vaccine you're going to use in an hour, otherwise mix it again. I'm not going to go onto that slide too much, as I kind of talked about that in past presentations. But again, just handle the vaccines properly. These are the ones I've highlighted in green here, the products that Merck has. Again, I'm not saying that these are the products that absolutely you have to use. There's other equivalent ones out there, but just sort of keep, or somewhat equivalent ones out there, but just keep these things in mind. Usually the calves, and I think Manitoba is not a lot different than where I'm from in Alberta, but typically you're giving the calves a viral vaccine with protection against the bacterial causes of pneumonia. That's what the PM and the MH is for, Pasteurella maltosida, Mannheimia hemolytic, the two ones that cause like shipping fever, summer pneumonias, that sort of thing. So often they're given that one shot. Our product happens to be Vista once for that. Prior to turnout, a lot of times producers might even go real early with that and give a second shot just to turnout. Depends on when the calves are born and how old they are. And the Clostridiols definitely want to prevent against blackleg. We see those cases every year. And typically ours, we use this Visionate somnus, which is combined with Histophilus. Again, there's other products out there. I'm just giving the example in this case. The cows, it's just the viral causes of abortion, the IBR, excuse me, BVD that we want to for sure prevent against. Those things will go a long ways to help in the reproductive performance of the cows. Again, last presentation talked about condition scoring and all that. They need to be in pretty good condition going out. If you're going to breed them right away, they will improve on good grass, but that will take time if they go out pretty thin. The clostridial diseases, I know some areas of Manitoba now are running into some red rot or hemolyticum with these issues with liver flukes, and so consider that in the cows as well. And again, the bulls possibly a foot rot vaccine if they're going to be semen tested. Do that at the same time. That was just an example of the Vista once, but again, look at that's the calf vaccine, but just look at all the things that you want to vaccinate going out, and I think that's the really important thing about this slide. Make sure the vaccine you're picking up is what you want, protection for those calves going out to pasture that will carry on into the fall when they come home. And these are the sort of things we want to prevent at pasture. This is a dead steer that was opened up with the typical shipping fever pneumonia, and on the left hand of the screen there you'll see that it's maybe a little bit of normal lung, and that's about all. On the right hand, the heart is buried under there, all that fibrin and inflammatory exudate. These are the sort of things what we're trying to vaccinate to prevent against. And again, these cattle go to pasture. They get into big pastures where you can't see them, and it's really hard to discover them in time to treat them, to save them. So the more we can vaccinate, prevent against these things going out to pasture, the better survival rate you will have over the summer, and the calves doing well and that sort of thing. So again, just consider that as well. This is a calf that's opened up. You can see on the right hand of the screen is actually his hip joint, so this is the back leg reflected back. And in spite of us harping for years and years on vaccinating every year in our area, I know Manitoba is probably perfect and everybody vaccinates, and that's great. Carry on doing it. Blacklegs are very inexpensive. The clostridials are a pretty inexpensive vaccine, and every year we see a bunch of these outbreaks. Typically at pasture, sometimes just before they go to pasture, they get the spores out of the dirt, and this will kill them quick. And you will not find a lot of these at pasture. They will be long gone, dead, scavenged, and ravaged by coyotes, and you may find some bones, and this is what you're going to find. So again, a vaccine that's very, very effective, pretty much 100% protective when it's done right, and this will eliminate a lot of issues going forward. So just consider that as a minimal vaccination program, but preferably use those other things to try to prevent all those other diseases that you might want to get. Just want to throw this slide up. Another really looks almost like a liver, but this is actually a lung of a bison, but it's got mycoplasma in it. We talk about mycoplasma in cattle. Fortunately, in cattle, it's a secondary invader, usually to other infections, which are prevented by that product they call Vista once as an example. It's either the viruses or the bacteria, other ones predispose them to getting this mycoplasma as a secondary thing. You seldom will see severe cases like this in cattle, fortunately, and so if we can prevent, again, those other diseases from showing themselves, you won't get this type of thing at pasture. Just wanted to just talk now, kind of getting into the weight gains thing here for the last 10 or 15 minutes. Implants, really consider them. I know there's lots of things that always we get the questions on safety. Very safe products have been around for 50 years. All cattle going into the feedlots are literally going to be implanted unless they're on a totally organic program, and that's very, very rare. You can gain into that 20 pounds. What you want to do is consider implanting your calves either on exit to the pasture or as you castrate them. So if it's done at a younger age, even if they're ringed at a day of age, really any time that the bull calves are castrated, you could implant. I've shown here the Ralgro wheel. It's the typical one that's given to young calves. The other ones are more for either older calves or yearlings, that sort of thing. And you're going to get 90 days, 60 to 90 days of increased growth with these things. About a 20 to 30 to 1 return on your money. Again, improving feed efficiency, increasing average daily gain, and you're just definitely going to get return on these things when you come on. Not that hard to do. It takes a little bit of skill initially because these little calves are a little tougher to do, And you may want to consider doing the heifers. It is approved on heifers, one implant. I don't recommend it just because if there's a mistake made and you implant the heifers twice, you're going to have some reproductive problem with your heifer calves. So any calves that you know are not going to be replacements, so maybe the bottom half of the herd, the bottom third, you could implant them and get that same gain as you do on the steer calves. So definitely an underutilized resource from a management standpoint, and again, if you're vaccinating and doing these other things, catching the calves, not that difficult to do once you get onto it. That slide is just basically showing kind of a standard, you can say 20 to 25 pounds of gain with Ralgro as the example in this case over normal calves. So, and that's repeatable, repeatable, repeatable. There's been numerous trials over the years showing that in all kinds of management situations. The big thing with them is, of course, restraining them, and this is where we get into the calves. If you're given 2 shots, you want to make sure the vaccines are spread out, good restraint so you can implant them. I kind of preferably, I know in Alberta we talk about brandings all the time, but I personally prefer the calf table where you can kind of really hang on to them well and do everything properly and be careful about how you do it. This is just showing a Revlor gun, which is one's more for older calves or yearlings, that sort of thing. Little different gun, little bigger implant, but again, some of the real old calves are sometimes given this, but typically turn out to pasture using the Ralgro, the small implant. What I would like to show here is just it's showing the middle of the ear is where you want to give it, sort of mid-ear, so middle of the ear from the head to the tip of the ear, and then top to bottom about the middle is ideal. You're going to have to move it around. A little bit of tags are in the way, but we'll typically implant on the non-tagged ear. That's not the case in this picture, but he's probably got I think it looks like he's got a tag on the other side as well. So, and this one, you want to try to avoid crushing the implants, but these guns are set up. This Revlor gun that you see here will actually push the ear away so you won't crush the pellets. The Ralgro implant's pretty small and typically pretty hard to crush the implant. That's in that case. Through this slide in just because, again, want to keep things pretty clean when we're doing all these procedures. You want to disinfect the needle of the Ralgro gun, for instance. In between, this is a standard disinfectant tray. But don't, a lot of producers get pretty careful, like to do a really good job, and that's great, but don't think you want to do the same thing with your vaccination needles, because those live vaccines will be killed by any kind of disinfectant. So you do not want to use disinfectant on your vaccination needles. You just want to use them when they start to get dull or whatever, get a new one and change the needle, but do not disinfect your vaccinating syringes in between uses. This is where I'm just talking about probably a new thing that's come up with these really long-acting antibiotics out on the map. There's more and more of this being done. Again, we don't want to abuse antibiotics, and this is probably a discussion with your veterinarian, but if you have a lot of pneumonia-type trouble right at turnout, a lot of these products now will last upwards of a month in the animal. Not a big amount has to be given to these small calves. These drugs have usually fairly long withdrawals, but again, small calves, we're not really that concerned about that because they're not going to be butchered and eaten for a long time. So this is some examples of metaphylactic uses, which is sort of more of a preventative thing, if you like. But the big thing, the little goat on the right-hand side, the stressful conditions. So again, if transportation's a long ways to pasture, if these calves are really young, if you've got inclement weather, that sort of thing, it might be good money to do that in some cases. But again, have that discussion with your veterinarian because he or she knows the best situation on your herd and whether you need it or not. So the one, and again, this isn't really an infomercial, but just as an example of Zapriva, which is one of those. Draxxin is another one. There's Zactran, Mycotil. There's a bunch of these out there on the market. Very low dosage. These are the bacteria that they prevent against. So the Mannheimia you see written down there in the pasture are the two really common ones, and kind of shipping fever, stressful pneumonias going out to pasture. And then maybe something to consider about. This is the ad that you see in the paper, and so that now you understand what this product is for. It's either a feedlot drug, or I think it may have a place in some of these pasture cattle if there's been a past experience of respiratory disease and losses at pasture or having to treat lots. And I've just listed a bunch there. Again, the macrolides on the top, the two commonly used ones, Zaprevo and Draxin, and then in the past tetracyclines were given, and again, that might be considered. Big thing, talk to your veterinarian to see if they're needed. I'm not saying to use them in all situations. I'm saying to look at it, consider it, whether it may or may not pay you long term. This picture I took last summer, we had a lot of fly problems, and then you drive around the country seeing all the cattle just herded up into one thing, and this is what we call that gadding from horn and face flies. Sometimes it's mosquitoes. These insecticide ear tags or silence at turnout, silence being a pour-on, will last a couple months. And if you can do it right as they're going out to pasture, at least you know you have 2 months protection, because this will really decrease gains on both calves. These are some yearlings, but they just don't do well when they're all standing in the middle of the pasture trying to huddle up, getting away from the insects. So I'm pretty sure that Manitoba is not horn and face fly free or mosquito free, or just like Alberta. So this would be, again, a pretty beneficial thing to do at least to one of the cow of the pair. And again, I usually recommend doing the cow. The calf is in close proximity. The cow yearlings, of course, do them as well. And then getting into and just a couple more minutes just on parasites here while I quickly finish up. The parasites are going to be a thing midsummer where they pick up these parasites. This just shows the life cycle. The cattle really pick up the parasites off the grass in the spring. So calves, as they get older and start utilizing more grass, they're going to pick them up, and they will decrease gains and lead to stressing the immune system and maybe a predisposition to other diseases if they get heavily parasitized. So we want to think about that. We've been doing more, Merck has been doing more work with that across Canada, looking at the parasite levels in Canada and then they are present across the country. So what we're really talking about when we're looking at parasites is more increasing gain. These were calves that were quite healthy looking, but they still had 40 eggs per gram. You see at the bottom there, it's significant enough to deworm, and these calves would get another 20 to 25 to 30 to 40 depending pounds of gain depending on the parasite level in them. So let's think of the minimum and say 20 pounds if they're just lightly parasitized. These cattle can be checked by taking a fecal sample into your veterinarian and then seeing if they need to be dewormed, type of thing. But that's more, again, midsummer, not at turnout, because they should be going out pretty much zero. The calves would be for sure. There's another study done in the States. They got about 50 pounds of gain, but again, probably a little more heavily parasitized cattle. I'll just flip through. This is my last slide, Linda, so and then I'll turn it back to everybody there, or Lionel. Everybody, when they turn out, they kind of forget the bull. I think we think about the bull when we do a breeding soundness exam. Pretty ugly set of testicles here that were frostbitten heavily. We got to think those bulls have just come through the winter, so their nutrition has to be right up to date and everything. And you know, when you're doing the BSE exam or the breeding soundness exam, not BSE as in mad cow, breeding soundness exam, we want to think about things we've got to do to the bull. Really check him out. He's half your breeding potential. You know, does he need his foot trimmed? That sort of things. Because problems with bulls at pasture end up being real problems because the cows aren't getting bred. So you know, think of all those things. Kind of, there's sometimes the forgotten half of the herd, and we just want to think about that at turnout as well. And I think that's good. So if there's any, I think I'm right bang on time here. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them for the next few minutes.
I don't have any questions right now. Lionel, did you have anything? Or I can unmute Melissa if they have any questions.
Go ahead and unmute them, but I have a question for Roya. Regarding the the phase flies and just the whole issue with flies and mosquitoes throughout the summer. Does the ivermectin type products have anything or any value of putting it on before they go to pasture or doing it while they're on pasture?
Okay, and would everybody else hear Lionel there, Linda? So everybody online knows the question?
Yes, they can all hear Lionel. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry everybody. No, good question, Lionel. Yeah, and I guess again, Merck with the safeguard is kind of getting into the deworming midsummer, and I guess our other adage is trying to leave the less residues on the pasture from those products, from the destroying the dung beetle and stuff. But if you need to use them, the answer to your question is yes, you do get some protection from horn and face flies for about a month with the ivermectin type product. So you know, as well as again, they probably don't need deworming going out to pasture, but for that protection, you will get about a month's protection from them. I kind of have a tendency to use the silence just because it's kind of more specific and will last a couple months, but that's my reasoning there. But yeah, you will get some effect for sure.
Okay. I guess, is there any other questions, Linda?
No, I don't have anything at this time, and I've unmuted Melissa if they have any questions there. So.
Okay. Can you give me my the screen back?
Sure.
Thanks, Roy. That was great. That was a lot of good information, and I think as we get hopefully closer to turnout here in Manitoba, that we'll be looking for producers to be going through and using or starting to run the cattle through. One thing I wanted to mention is
okay, and yes.
Go ahead, Roy.
No, I just want to mention, sorry it was a little rushed there, but that half an hour I tried to put as much as I could in about all the cow calf and the bull, so hopefully it came across all right.
Yeah, no, it was really good. One thing I wanted to mention is that actually Dr. Roy is going to be in Douglas this month here on the 24th of April, and they're doing increasing pasture profits workshop, and what they're doing there is there's going to be an implant workshop. Jane Thornton, who's our forage specialist, is there, and she's going to be talking about pasture planning. So basically maybe some of the things that Melissa was talking about not turning cattle out too quick and managing your pasture, it'll be able to be discussed there. And then they're going to have some hands-on work with putting implants in, I think, as well. So they are asking if people are interested in coming to pre-register. So this makes it easier for organizing the meeting. So if you're interested, the information is here, or if you know somebody else that might be interested, if you could let them know and just contact even the local GO office, and we'll put them in contact with Heather. And I guess with that, just some of the context like we normally do at the end of the webinars. This is my information and Linda, so that's out of the Cirrus GO office. And that's where the webinar has been run out of today. And then also the staff from Southwest and South Parkland that and Andrea's information is there, and so is Melissa's. So if you got questions regarding rations, contact any of the GO offices in your area. But if you want to talk specifically to them, there's their contact information. Also, Jane Thornton's number's on there, and she's our forage and pasture specialist. So if you're wanting information regarding your pasture and turnouts, if you want to give her a call. So I guess with that, if there's no other questions, I'd like to thank our presenters today. It was a lot of good information, and we will be having one more of the cattle chats before we hopefully get to turn the cattle out in June. So we're going to have one next month. So we'll see everybody next month, and thanks for attending.